the whole environment, the chemicals that are swirling around in there are set for plasticity because we were basically designed to come into the world and be customized to our experience. I mean, if the human animal is exceptionally good at any one thing, it's that.
So if you're an adult, say if you're a 35-year-old man with a family or a 35-year-old woman with a family and a job, and you want to learn a new skill, what is the best way to force your brain to accept these new patterns and learn this quickly?
By attacking two separate parts of a process. Neuroplasticity is not an event. It's a process, and it has two parts. The first one is, if you want to learn and change your brain as an adult, there has to be a high level of focus and engagement. There's absolutely no way around this because so focus and intensity and that kind of the Goggins phenotype, right? I think Goggins is now a noun, a verb, and a pronoun, right? It's like, it's amazing. So if you're going to Goggins this process, what you need to do is you need to, regardless of how agitated you feel, you have to lean in and focus extremely hard. Now, the reason for that is that there's a neurochemical norepinephrine, also called adrenaline, same thing, that's released in the brain and body. Most people back off at that point because they feel this agitation. But we have to remember that that noradrenaline was designed to get us into movement. That's the purpose of noradrenaline, to take us out of stillness and into movement. And then the other thing we have to do is we have to take that elevated level of alertness and we have to focus it. And there's a second neuromodulator called acetylcholine, which is secreted from this little structure in the base of the forebrain when we visually focus on something. Or in the case of maybe if you're doing auditory learning, when you focus with your auditory attention.
Can I pause you there for a second?
Yeah.
So acetylcholine you could take in a supplement, and norepinephrine you can actually get from ice tanks. Like you can get it from cryo chambers, you can get it from cryotherapy. So using those strategies of taking, like, acetylcholine is actually an alpha brain, one of the supplements my company sells. When you take that along with float tanks and cryo chambers and do some intense exercise or whatever you're trying to get good at with intense focus, can those things accelerate that process?
Almost certainly increases the plasticity, the rate of plasticity.
So you would recommend if someone was trying to get better at something, like a cryo chamber would actually accelerate the process of learning?
Yeah. So yes. So
Wow.
So the reason for that, though, but you don't necessarily need a cryo chamber. What you need are, so we have these requirements. We need urgency and focus to trigger plasticity.
Right.
That's one part of the process. I haven't mentioned the second part yet. Neuroplasticity is triggered when urgency and focus combine. Acetylcholine is released, for the aficionados out there, it's called the nucleus basalis, but that doesn't matter. There's a little compartment of neurons in the base of your forebrain that doesn't like to release acetylcholine on a regular basis. It's
greedy.
It's greedy, and it doesn't want to use that. If you're a child, it'll drain your brain with acetylcholine. But as an adult, 30, 40, up to
Why
8.
is that?
Because Mother Nature designed us to learn what we need to learn and then do that, reproduce and die. I mean, not to be,
How rude.
dark about it, but I would say evolution is not about us, it's about the offspring.
Yes.
Right? 100%.
And then it's not even about them, it's about their offspring.
Exactly.
Never ends.
We are being manipulated from the inside.
Yes.
I mean, that's what kind of drew me in neurobiology, is that all these complex things you see in the world, it's all internal. So, if you get urgency, it can come from, let's use David he's a shining example of this, right? You can sit there and just ramp up your level of urgency through purely psychological means. You could take an ice bath. You could do high intensity breathing, anything that brings your level of alertness up.
Can I ask you this? If you were going to try to improve your ability to get better at something, when would you use that ice bath or the cryotherapy? Would you use it before? Would you use it afterwards?
Definitely before.
Before
the learning. What we're talking about is a two-part process. The first part is the learning trigger. The learning trigger is gated by two things: adrenaline, which is also norepinephrine, same thing, and acetylcholine. And so you need that level of alertness up, and you need acetylcholine released at the location in the brain that corresponds to what you're trying to learn. So things like supplements and certain nutrition regimens can assist the process for sure. There's no question about that. Things like alpha GPC, caffeine will bring up the adrenaline and kind of anything to raise that alertness.
Doesn't nicotine as well? Nicotine has some sort of a nootropic benefit to it. Not encouraging people to smoke, but you could take it in various forms, particularly gum. I know people take it in gum just for the nootropic benefit of it?
Yeah, I'm not encouraging people to take anything, but there's a very, very famous Nobel Prize winning neuroscientist who I went to his office to visit him in New York, and he chewed 7 pieces of Nicorette during that half-hour meeting. And I was like, what is going on here? And he said, well, first of all, it increases plasticity. And second of all, he has the belief, and this is not a clinical study, but he thinks that it can also hold off certain forms of Parkinson's and Alzheimer's.
Didn't Bertrand Russell, wasn't he like a famous smoker? Like, wouldn't even...
Oh, I don't know.
I think he wouldn't even go on a plane unless there was a smoking section, because he couldn't imagine not having his pipe for a certain amount of time.
Well, creatives, when smoking became less in vogue, I think creatives really suffered because it's very clear that, so Nicorette is nicotine, and the acetylcholine binds to the nicotinic receptor. So when you take nicotine in cigarette form or in Nicorette form, you're actually increasing the release of the action of acetylcholine in the brain.
Yeah, I don't smoke cigarettes, but I have. And the only time I have is before shows, because I have friends that are comedians that would smoke, and I'd be like, give me one of them things. Let me see what's going on. And I smoked, and I was like, whoa, dude, you get high off these things. This is crazy, particularly if you don't smoke cigarettes. You get this really weird high.
Well, your receptors have never seen that level of nicotine before, and they like that.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for those moments, your acetylcholine is like a spotlight. It brings your vision literally into this more kind of portrait mode where you can see more like a narrow window of what's going on. There are behavioral ways to access this too. Before a fight, if somebody's really ramped up, their world is not